Good morning, Year 9. I'm just going to put the stream into Teams and then I'll be right with you. So if you can't currently see you, because I am, nope, that's the wrong Year 9. Okay, we're going to get right into it today. Just going to let people join and then we are going to get right into it because we have a lot to do today. In terms of just a bit of a recap as well as then moving forward with the actual work. So last week, obviously, you only had one lesson. This week's the 3. And the plan for what the week is I'm going to recap the Berlin airlift that we did last Monday. And then then today we're going to look at the consequences. Because did we do a consequence question last week? Can't remember. Anyway, we looked at the Berlin airlift last week, definitely. Going to look at the consequences today. And then on Thursday? Yeah, on Thursday, we are going to start looking at, let me have a look because I've already set your assignments because I'm a legend. Let's go to assignments that you haven't seen yet. Oh yeah, then we're going to look at the arms race and the space race on Thursday and Friday. So I will be in my NASA jumper on Friday, even though it's probably going to be like 1,000,000 degrees. So that then we are in basically a nicer place for next week. So recapping then, I've talked for 2 minutes and waffled. Now people have come to join. I can start to talk. So Berlin airlift, we looked at that last week. And Stalin and the West have got a rocky relationship after the Truman Doctrine and Marshall Aid. And things have become a little bit tricky because they've got common form and common con, and they've got these 2 different policies. Basically, they want to keep each other where they are and not expand. That then presents a problem because the West and East then start to break down the communications, and the Germany is divided into 4, with the USA, the USSR, France, and the UK all having a zone each, along with Berlin divided into the same way into 4. Now, the UK and the USA have always had a special relationship and decide that they are going to merge their zones for bi-zonia. And they're going to merge their zones and they don't tell Stalin. And Stalin is quite put out by that. He's not happy about it. He is frustrated, and he's not impressed. He then is not impressed by the fact that France then get in on the Act and they merge their zone with the British and US zone, so it becomes trizonia, so 3. So the 3 zones become 1 and are managed by the 3 different countries. And once again, they haven't told Stalin. Stalin's very paranoid. Stalin's very upset. He's not happy with it. The whole point of the Grand Alliance was so that they could talk to one another. So it's really not an ideal situation for Stalin at this point. So it can't get any worse, surely. No way. The West then decide that they are going to create a brand new currency that can only be used in West Germany and West Berlin. And once again, do not tell Stalin. Now, the whole aim of the Grand Alliance, as I said, was open communication to keep things, keep that allies, or the alliance, I should say, even though World War II was over, keep that friendship. Something's going on outside my house. I do apologise. So, yeah. And they don't tell him. And Stalin is really frustrated by that. It makes him really paranoid. He was a paranoid character anyway. And he is frustrated by it all and decides that actually the West have been meddling in the East, because remember, Berlin is in the Eastern zone. They've been meddling too much. They've not told him enough. He's had enough. That's it. Done. Over. And he blockades the railways, the canals, and the roads, and preventing from supplies from the West coming into West Berlin. Allies, particularly Truman, are furious about this, which, to be honest, they don't have a case for, but there you go, and decide that they are going to airlift supplies into Berlin. So they have, at the height of the crisis, the Berlin airlift, they have a plane landing 1 every 3 minutes. 79 pilots actually did die as a direct result of the Berlin airlift, and it was a really difficult operation. The operation lasts around 10 months, and a lot of literature that you'll find, oh, look at me go, so a lot of like textbooks, bar obviously the one that we use, like online and research, it will say it lasted 12 months. It didn't, it lasted 10 because of when it started in June and when it finishes in May. So don't let that persuade you. It's a 10-month thing. And Stalin takes his decision not to shoot down any of the planes, else it would have started an act of war. 3% of West Berliners do actually leave and move to the west, to the east even, and a lot of Berliners leave because of the amount of shortages. However, the West do quite an amazing feat of getting supplies lifted in to the Berliners, so they don't starve. In May, then, the Stalin decides that it's not worth it anymore. The West haven't given up. They haven't been starved out and starved into submission. It's not worked. He's humiliated and embarrassed. And he just feels that if he continues the Berlin airlift, or he continues the blockade, I should say, the Berlin airlift will also continue, won't give up, and he'll just be made to look like more of a fool than he already is. So there are 3 major consequences of the Berlin airlift, and one of them is basically your whole lesson today, but I just wanted to go over those consequences before we look at NATO and the Warsaw Pact. Here we go. So consequence number 1. One thing that happens is it increases the rivalry between the West and the East. Okay, so obviously the friendship now is out of the window when it comes to the East and the West. They are no longer mates. That's done. They are over. There's now a rivalry between them that has increased and gone up on a major level. You've also got let me just double check these names before I put them up. There we go. We've got the permanent division of Germany. So the West creates a new country of West Germany. We knew it as West Germany in this country, really, but the official name was the Federal Republic of Germany. And the East creates an official country called the German Democratic Republic. So they get given new official names rather than East and West Germany, and they also then have their own separate governments. It becomes, instead of one country that's divided, it becomes 2 separate countries. And finally, the one that we are going to focus on today, the biggest consequence, it leads to the creation of NATO. So what is NATO, I hear you ask? I know you're dying to know. Oh Lord, there's lots of things coming through. I will deal with them all in a moment. What is NATO then? What do you think? You're probably thinking, well, what are you talking about, miss? NATO is something that still exists today, and effectively it's an alliance, all right? And it stands for, NATO is not just one, a random collection of letters. It stands for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. has a lot of influence, particularly here in the West. And in Britain, they have something even called the NATO alphabet. So when I used to work for Argos, I used to have to go down on the shelves, and in order to put it away on delivery, I would have to say 2, 3, Alpha, Tango, which would be shelf 23, row A, or column A, row T. So that alphabet of Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot. Yeah, I'm sad, I still know it. There is an alphabet used by NATO when they are communicating. So what exactly is it? Well, it's all Western European states joined together to create an alliance, effectively, along with America. Now, it is a military alliance, not just a political alliance. So that means that if a country within NATO is attacked or has a military problem, the other countries of NATO would step in with their military. So quite often, if you've ever watched any like army programs or whatever, or watch the news, a lot of the things that our troops are deployed to are NATO operations. So operations that concern the countries that are within NATO. So what effectively then was its aims? Well, its aims and its main purpose is to prevent, or was, to prevent Soviet expansion. So when it was initially created, it's not that now. When it was initially created, NATO's main purpose was to prevent the expansion of the Soviets and effectively a military version of the Truman Doctrine. That's the way you could think about it. Now, why do you think Stalin is going to find this a threat? Well, I think it's quite obvious, is he sees it as an aggressive alliance. Okay, so Stalin sees, and I can understand why Stalin feels this way, is that he's now seen all the Western countries come together and have an alliance against the Soviets. So he sees this as an aggressive thing, and that actually the Western countries are they're out to get him, they're out to get the Soviet Union, they're out to get the Eastern Bloc, and he's just not happy about it, particularly with what's going on in West Germany. West Germany is now being completely rebuilt by the Western allies, including giving them an army, and Stalin is not here for it. Not at all. He is not here for it. So he begins to develop the Warsaw Pact. I'm just going to rub this off so I've got somewhere to answer your help answer the questions that I've set you. Let's do this. Goes up a little bit quicker. Amazing what a bit of hand sanitizer can do for a board. Probably think you miss it's all smeared. Well. Might be smeared, but with a little bit of a dry one. And away it goes. We now have a clean-ish board. So let's look at then the Warsaw Pact. Now, as you can imagine, when NATO is set up, we've talked about how Stalin was threatened. He thought it was an aggressive alliance. And just like everything else that has happened with the Truman Doctrine, the Marshall Aid, Stalin feels then that the Warsaw, that the Soviets need their own version, okay, of NATO. Now, we will talk about this in a few lessons' time, but Stalin begins this Warsaw Pact, and it's not completed until 6 years after NATO was created, and actually 2 years after Stalin dies. Now, what was the Warsaw Pact? Well, it's pretty straightforward, okay? The Warsaw Pact was a military alliance of Eastern Europe. So nothing really different there. It's the East version of NATO, okay? Now, the countries that were involved then are obviously the USSR, Albania, Poland, Romania, Hungary. Not like start like that, it's Hungary, okay? Just wanted to point that out to you while I did it here. It's not a country that is feeling like it needs to be. Obviously, East Germany then is included. The one that's most fun to spell, Czechoslovakia and Bulgaria. You're probably thinking, well, Miss, you didn't tell us what countries were in NATO, because it's so big compared to the Warsaw Pact, which has only got 8 members. Okay. And the idea was to support one another if they were attacked. So very similar to what NATO was aiming to do is if one of them was attacked, they would step in with their military and help. Now, it was commanded by the Soviets. The Soviets were in charge of this. And the Warsaw Pact did have very, very important consequences for the Eastern European countries. It does play a role, all right, in some crises. We're not going to look at this just yet, okay? But it does play a role in the Czechoslovakian crisis in 1968. All right, and it creates 2 rival military alliances. So bearing in mind, in 1955, we are only 10 years after World War II. And we're getting into this rocky ground of, okay, last time when World War I ended in 1918, it only really took 21 years for Hitler to create a second world war. Oh, I'm just seeing how wonky this is. Okay. So if you think 1918, end of World War I, by 1939, we are in World War II again, in another world war, World War II. So that's only 21 years. We are 10 years after World War II. So halfway between like the interwar periods and last time, and we've now got 2 major main military rivals. You can imagine people all over the world were feeling a little bit shaky, okay? A little bit not sure about this, and it has a major effect on the world. That covers the 3 questions I want you to cover, really, with those are the 3 questions I want you to cover about each of the different alliances. There is a challenge. Have a look at what see if you can find out if there are 3 countries that joined NATO and what date they joined NATO. And if you want to push yourself a little bit further, why did Yugoslavia not join the Warsaw Pact? Why did they decide that they were not going to be part of the Warsaw Pact and what Stalin had begun to create? All right. While I do, here we go. Blue light is giving me headaches. What I'd like you to do then is answer them in full sentences on the Word document that I've sent you. I have sent you as a PDF if you are looking on your phone and using your phone to do these so that you can at least see them. That's what I was using on my phone to make sure I covered all the points for you. And then on all Thursday. Come on, Miss Martin, get in your head in the game. We're going to look at the arms race. So if you could submit this via Teams, that would be great. And on Wednesday morning at 8 a.m, your arms race materials will arrive on Teams and should be on Show My Homework also. Right then, that's what you need from today. That's me done. If you need anything, give me a shout. I am online all day. Bye. Okay.